Thank you very much. Now we are going to start the panel discussion. And I would like to encourage the audience that please utilize this opportunity and pose your questions to, to our lecturers. And let's utilize the opportunity that they are still here and you can address them directly since the topic is very important. Unfortunately, we have today a very tough agenda and therefore we need to finish at least at 1:15. So we are pressed for time and now I open the opportunity to raise your question. It can be in English and the microphone will be provided or in Czech. And so please, does anybody have the first question? Please, gentleman over there.
Thank you. Jiří Hošek, Unipetro, Czech Republic. My question, if I look at this title post Paris, I have a question, or I would like to see or to know your opinion on this. What would be the post Paris future? Because we know that the reason, and from perspective of Europe, was to involve into the fulfillment of this environmental target and so all other pollutant. I mean, U.S., India, China, and so on. And what is your opinion on the situation that for example, in U.S. the Supreme Court now ruled this ban and ruled about the stay of the Obama CPP, this clean power plan. So we know that we are before the elections. What you see the future in the U.S. and as I understand well, there is also uncertain situation in China because according to the Paris criteria, it is involved into the developing countries. It means it will ask for the money to invest to this equipment which would help to reach this environment. Sorry. So that's also my question is what is with the China future because it is for the China is to 2020 I think so maybe that we will import from China the steel and products which will be also invested by European countries and so on. Thank you.
If I just interpret your questions properly, you would like to see the reaction. Yes, but regarding the European Union's position in the light of the worldwide market, if it will be implemented in EU, but in other countries there are different. So I think I would address with this either Mr. Good or Ilya.
I think at a high level, the Paris Agreement and the contributions that the different countries were making there demonstrate that there is worldwide commitment for action. Those contributions are a sort of a political statement of political intent, and you have to measure them by the policies and measures which countries put in place. So, yeah, that will be the test by which you see action. I think you talk particularly about the United States and China. They're very important because of the level of their emissions. I think what's happening in China is very interesting. They've just announced that they are going to put in place, I think from next year, the world's biggest emissions trading system. So they are going to have a bigger emissions trading system than in EU. It's going to be a bit more comprehensive. So I think the intention in China is very, very strong. They also have a whole series of very ambitious targets in different subsectors in terms of what they're seeking to do. They have ambitious targets for renewable electricity and are introducing a new electricity tradable certificates scheme. So I think there's a lot of action happening in China, and they are very much aware that they need to do it. As a very planned economy, they actually have calculated that they are much more at risk of climate change than Europe is. I mean, the sensitivity for them from a 3-4 degrees change is much more significant than it is in Europe. So I think Chinese action on the ground is very impressive. They're also trying to get technological leadership in certain technologies. I mean, they're making lots of strategic investments in things like battery technology for vehicles. So I don't think their commitment can be doubted. United States, clearly at a federal level, they have difficulties with legislation on climate. So you're seeing executive orders by the Obama, which was subject to a recent court case, which doesn't stop it, it just delays it to allow the legal process to carry on. Most commentators think that the legal grounds for that the complainants are putting in are very weak. So I think most people are betting that the plan will carry on regardless. Again, you have to look at what's happening on the ground in the United States, and if you actually look at some of the state-level action, there's some pretty impressive policies going on. The Californian climate policy is world-leading. It's equally, if not more ambitious than the European policy. The level of ambition of their vehicle standards, their fuel standards are very, very impressive and can be benchmarked very strongly with the action in Europe. And you're seeing very strong action in Canada and Canadian provinces in terms of Quebec and Ontario, who's just announced a cap-and-trade scheme, which is going to be linked in with California and Quebec. So I think it's a one-way street. There is a lot of action happening around the world, and it's just a case of ensuring that the pace of that keeps up with the ambition.
Thank you very much, Philip. Further questions?
Thank you. My name is Johan de Leu, and I'm representing the Belgian Federation of Importers and Distributors, member of UPI. I have a first question to the person from the NGO, from Glopolis, but maybe also for DG Energy. The word renewable fell a lot of times during your presentations, but it occurred to me that the term biofuels only came into your presentation a few times, and even between brackets. So I get the impression that the word biofuels came into the presentation more by accident than really meant. So am I correct thinking that biofuels is not anymore top of mind in the discussions, even though it's one of the cheapest and still very efficient ways to reduce greenhouse gases in transport? Or is it simply not mentioned because it's normal that we use biofuels? That's my first question. I have a second one. I don't know if I
think let's move on the first question.
Yeah, okay.
If you agree. Maybe Wojtek.
Yep. Well, I think that I did not even mention biofuels in my presentation, and the reason is that biofuels may contribute a small slice in the market, but it doesn't seem to be a mass solution for transport in a long-term future. Essentially for two reasons. First, because there is this whole uncertainty about environmental consequences of biofuels. The debate is more and more complex, and it doesn't seem that there is very strong support for heavily relying on biofuels in a longer term. And at the same time, we see that there are other solutions that are able to deal with the problem on much larger scale, like we are debating about 5, 10 or something like that % of biofuels as the long-term target we would have in Europe, while we've been cutting emissions from new cars by almost 5% in the Czech Republic over the previous 7 years, so that the scale of other solutions appears to be much bigger than what biofuels will be able to contribute in a longer term, which doesn't make it completely irrelevant. It may play a small role, a small slice in the market, but probably not as one of the key directions we will walk.
Thank you very much, Wojtek. I would address also the same question to Laura, because you dealt in your presentation with biofuels.
Thank you. Yes, I addressed the issue of biofuels in my presentation, because for the time being, the main component of moving towards the achievement of the mandatory targets of the EU via the Renewable Energy Directive is actually made by biofuels, right? So they do play, for the time being, a considerable role for the time being. As Wojtek correctly pointed out, there are concerns and considerations that are being addressed when it comes to the sustainability of biofuels that are being used, so their actual impact. Are we displacing the problem somewhere else rather than solving it? So these are very relevant questions that are important to answer in a robust way. There's a new generation of biofuels which are not competing with food production and animal feed production that are on the way. They are outside. There's a number of technologically mature solutions that are not yet market mature, so they're not competitive in terms of costs, basically, and therefore they are not widespread on the market, which does not mean that there's no investments going on in that area. So I would see advanced biofuels playing a certain role in the future, even in the longer term, so well beyond 2020. There are some cases, if I may make one example, there are some cases where you may end up, for instance, saying, right, I'm looking at greenhouse gas performance, but you might consider also the interest of solving different problems. When I look at the pathway, for instance, of converting municipal solid waste into advanced liquid biofuel, that might be an interesting solution beyond the aspect of greenhouse gas emissions profile provided.
Thank you very much, Laura. Very relevant question and very important answers. Just please leave the microphone because there is another question.
I'm sorry.
So please go ahead with that.
Well, I had a question to the lady of the Joint Research Center. I found the presentation about the well-to-wheel analysis very interesting, but I'm starting to asking myself some questions. It became clear to me, or maybe I misunderstood, but it became clear to me that the winning combination of cars and fuels, if there is something as a winning combination, but the winning combination is very depending on the electricity mix used in a certain member state. So does it make any sense for the European Commission to provide guidelines to the member states saying how many recharging or refueling points have to be, what distance from each other, as I understood that it is very depending on the on the electricity mix used in the country?
Well, certainly, as it is valid for all the pathways, not just for the electric pathways, the electricity mix plays an important role, and I try to illustrate that in some of the slides. At the same time, yes, it is important to promote a range of solutions, including electromobility solutions, not necessarily excluding others, but including electromobility solutions at the national state. This is actually something that is happening with the Alternative Fuels Infrastructure Directive and the national plans, frameworks that are being prepared by the member states going in that direction. There is the implicit assumption that there will be a progressive greening of the EU electricity mix over the coming years, and that's a trend that not only we have seen in the past years, but that is also embedded in the policy guidelines that the Commission is working on right now beyond 2020.
Yeah, just very quickly to add to that, I think you know, we pursue policies on a range of different areas, so we have to look at everything. So we look at the vehicles, we look at the fuels, we look at the infrastructure, and we look at the electricity market and the electricity mix. And I mentioned briefly in my presentation, I mean, one of the biggest areas of decarbonisation and biggest areas of renewable energy will be the electricity mix. That will be something which will change fairly dramatically over the next 15 years. I mean, we're forecasting that by 2030, around 50% of electricity will be from purely renewable sources. And then you've probably got another, say, 20, 25%, which will be from nuclear. So we'll be, by 2030, potentially the electricity mix, which will be 70+% low carbon or very low carbon. Some number of large member states are looking at phasing out coal by 2025. So those impacts in terms of electricity could change fairly dramatically over a short period of time.
Thank you very much, Philip. So the probability of not being is very low. Yes, please.
Thank you. I would follow Johan's question, but not regarding electricity, but CNG. Is the fact in the same case? But for example, yesterday our government agreed that they will prepare a new anti-fossil law, which will probably follow the British one. Comparing that, or maybe not comparing that, but it's the same line. Friends of the Earth published a press release 2 months ago where they said replacing diesel by CNG is in fact the same as a smoker think that by replacing pure cigarette by cigarette with filter save him of cancer. It is just not solution if we speak about greenhouse gases emission. We saw the same in presentation of Laura. In fact, there is no big difference between diesel and CNG if we speak about greenhouse gases. But opposite that, probably all governments push strongly CNG to the market. And it brings also huge investment. The question is why we do it if it's not a long-term solution. It doesn't lead us to better future. It is just like a blind way.
Good question. It is seemingly also the car manufacturers are going in that direction. So Wojtek, please.
Yeah. I think that the answer is that greenhouse gas emissions are not the only environmental problem we deal with. We need to cut our local air pollution at the same time. We need to deal with smoke in the cities, which kills people right now. And here CNG may be a medium-term solution, which we will strive to replace with something else in order to cut GHG emissions. But in the short term, we may want to pursue this avenue as one of the solutions for local air pollution. And I can well imagine that it makes sense. And at the same time, if you're asking why does the government do that, I would say that the primary reason is that CNG has got a strong policy tradition in the Czech Republic, and in this country, if you have been doing something since early 90s, you simply continue in doing that.
May I ask also Mr. Kadera to comment that from your point of view, it is purely economical that you go into the direction?
I'll start from a different angle. Many of you in the room, I believe, come from the countries with the good 40 plus years of communist rule. So we well remember what it means to have a central planned economy. It didn't function. There was some plan at the time of 5 years. We always failed to fulfill. In reality, maybe not on paper. Now European Union plans in 7 years, also fails to implement or to succeed, but not such a big difference. But the big problem of the central planned economy was that unlike market economy, it was not run and not influenced by the demand. As car manufacturers, but it actually applies to many fields. Also in the European Union, the economy is not run or influenced that much by demand. What we do is we regulate the offer. And if this is the rules of the game, if there are binding regulations that regulate the offer, what we can offer as a product, what it has to fulfill, then we're very limited in proposing cost-friendly benefits. So in our opinion, yes, undoubtedly CNG is a step forward. It brings significant environmental change. It's much better. It's also more economical. That's an extra benefit. Yes, it costs a bit for the infrastructure to be built. Maybe not as expensive as other forms of electromobiles, so on and so forth. But coming back to 5 years and 7 years of planning, in one of my charts I spoke about 2050. And if we don't manage to fulfill the targets for 2020 because we set a strategy and then we see that everything is different, and then even speaking about what it will be in 2050, it's it's very just like looking out of a window saying like maybe this, maybe something else. So the predictions are very difficult. So in this opinion, or in this respect, at the time it's a affordable, good ecological solution we fully support. It can bring us forward, especially in urban areas. How long, or if it's long term or if it's medium term, I'm not in position to answer that. But at least it's a good step forward from our opinion.
Thank you very much. As I saw you wanted to comment as well, not?
Just very brief remark. I would insist on a fact that I tried to bring up in the presentation, and that Wojtek has underlined already. I mean, there's different metrics beyond greenhouse gas emissions that are informing the decision makers when they're making decisions on different options. And it is not just greenhouse gas emissions. There's other problems. Local air pollution is a stringent and urgent problem for a number of urban areas, and the fact of having a readily available technology at hand can be an interesting solution. At the same time, looking at the longer perspective, you may say also that there's opportunities for new developments, for instance, for making natural gas cleaner. The option of biomethane is not something to be disregarded, and that could improve the performance of, still I understand, a fossil fuel such as natural gas, but there may be combinations of solutions that might lead to interesting results.
Maybe one more comment, or two comments actually that come to my mind. The first one, I spoke about incentives. And unfortunately, in most of Europe, people, consumers, don't care about ecology of their vehicle when speaking of cars. They simply don't care. Majority of people doesn't care. So CNG is a good example, providing that the excise tax stays at lower level, where you can motivate at almost zero cost or very small cost the people to behave also ecologically because they're motivated by the economy, by the cheaper operating costs. So that is a good example from our point of view how to motivate people somehow to be more ecological. And the second remark, and that's something that's not necessarily on behalf of the company, maybe not necessarily the opinion that would be shared in the room, but looking at the CNG or the gas, sometimes I like reading the studies and the thoughts about mobility is about moving things from place A to B, moving myself from place A to place B. Usually I'm covered with 500 to 2 tons of metal, or whatever means of transport I'm using, so I'm actually just needing energy to move myself and the things around me from A to B. And the best would be actually to find a source of energy to get that moving, which is replaceable. And I'm not saying now that it's energy, that it's electromobility necessarily. What I'm saying is that, however we like it or not, probably oil is the long-term most expensive slash the shortest sighted way of moving things from A to B, because for moving things we have other sources of energy in brackets, not electric energy but energy, whereas for producing many things, including the cover, the table, all that, so far we can't do it without oil. So in that respect, I understand some of the visions and even some of the targets that the European Commission proposes, because there's also this strategic thinking behind, however we like it or not, that some production of some life necessities is impossible without oil, whereas moving is possible without oil.
Thank you very much. We are waiting for the questions. Yes, Marek?
Hello, my name is Marek Zouvala. I'm from Unipetrol, responsible for the retail, also a member of the Chapo group. Thank you so much for extending the topic of the CNG. My question, I would like to a little bit simplify the problem from the customer perspective, because at the end we have to sell the fuels to our customers. Our customers are buying the cars, and I just heard that, and from Mr. Kadera, there is an incentive, for the people, but in my eyes, just only one, and this is, the lowering of the excise tax. Especially in Czech Republic, knowing all those facts which has been mentioned here, average age of the car, approach of the people, who we are a little bit in this discussion forgetting, the customers, because those are the fulfillers of all those things. Just tell me, 2020 after, if there will be different government, maybe different approaches, they will change, this excise tax approach. I will tell you, openly, there is no CNG at all in Czech Republic, especially because people hurry a little bit price promiscuity. We know the market, how it was developing for the years. Now, tell me, what will be the incentive beside the excise tax lowering, because the car itself, brings to the customer certain discomfort. For example, they have to pump twice because the engine cannot be started without fossil fuel. So just tell me, how you will convince me as a customer that I should buy such a car. Compared to, and just another question just to all of us, how many of you is driving a car with the alternative fuel at the moment? And how many of you is thinking, to change it? Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question. I think it was rather more comment, Marek, if I'm not mistaken. But two question derives already from the second question, that how I would like to address it to Philip, that how is it ongoing, that there is a direction, there is an intention, and already there is an ongoing discussion with the refinery and the car manufacturing industry in order to successfully reach the target? It's been started or planned, or what is with this?
Yeah, we have. This is part of the discussion. The fact that we like to come to events like this and discuss with you is part of the way in which we have that conversation. This is a sort of ongoing process. This isn't anything new. This is something that, an area that we've been working at many years, and we have quite a sort of comprehensive package of legislation across many different aspects, whether it be the fuels, whether it be the vehicles, whether it be the infrastructure. So I suppose we're in a sort of process of continual improvement and in continual adjustment of those packages towards meeting the goals. And so we have sort of quite clear sort of regulatory processes and timelines, and so that enables stakeholders to engage and for us to have discussions about the trajectory, the ambition levels, and the timelines for our achieving our goals. So I know that's quite a general answer to the question, but I think it's more see this as an ongoing process.
And also to Laura, that do you share the view of that comment what we have heard?
I think that there's a number of things that are changing at a more general level, societal level. I understand that Mikael wishes to retire and drive a gasoline car around the countryside in a considerable number of years from now, from what I can judge. But I think there's some societal trends that we are assisting that are indicating that the approach towards the ownership of a car, for instance, is changing. This is not the first priority of a boy or a girl turning 18 to get the driver's license and go and buy a car to be able to move. So I think that if we're talking long term, that's an important aspect that needs to be taken into account to figure out what the mobility of tomorrow may look like beyond zooming in the analysis into saying, I have a diesel vehicle and I replace that diesel vehicle with whatever other type of fueled vehicle, let it be CNG, let it be electric. Possibly there's not going to be a one-to-one substitution because the mobility patterns will change and the way demand for mobility evolves may bring a number of surprises. Now, how that evolves may also be steered by policy. Then, just very briefly, would like to add a comment about the consultation. I mean, it's true that having the opportunity to participate in this type of discussions is part of the work at Commission level to be with very open ears, right, and see what is happening around. But outside the consultation is an inherent part of decision making and policy making within the Commission. You mentioned the WLTP, for instance, the change from the NEDC to WLTP. Vehicle manufacturers are heavily involved in that definition, and it couldn't be otherwise because you're working with an idea of changing or impacting heavily on the market, and necessarily so you need to do that in collaboration with the main economic actors, and that is something that is actually happening. It's not that decisions are taken behind closed doors. There's an ongoing process for consultation of economic stakeholders by Commission services before coming to a proposed proposal for legislation.
Thank you very much, Laura. Michal, you wanted to add something?
A small comment on the future of mobility, and building on what Laura mentioned, the mobility will change. Don't ask me when, but yes, now it's about owning a thing which helps me to be mobile, which I use 10-20% of my time. The rest it's parked somewhere. Streets are full of empty cars, so that will change, and it will change most likely towards using not the thing but using the service. As you take a taxi, maybe sometimes in the future there will be a pilotless car that you will just order with an app from your phone. It will just pick you, drop you, so on and so forth. So that is the direction where it might go. Nevertheless, it definitely will take a long time. This could be applicable only for instance, centers of large cities. So once you need to go, for instance, from Prague to Vienna, then most likely there will be different form of transport. And on top, as manufacturers, as Automotive, we're actually looking forward to this change, because we see it as a challenge, but we don't see it as a challenge to our employment, to our employees, to our business models. Because when you look at the usage of a car, normally when you buy a car, you keep it, let's say, for 5, 6, 7 years, and you drive up to 20,000 kilometers per year. So that's sort of an average usage, and then you sell it and you buy a new car. Whereas when you have a car which will just pick and drop and pick and drop and pick and drop people in the city center of Prague, then this car will make maybe 15 times as big mileage in short time, so it will have to be replaced faster. So in this respect, that will be very challenging, very interesting for the whole automotive world, and it hopefully will not have any impact on employment, on our economic performance, but it will have impact on how you will be mobile.
Thank you very much, Michal. Sorry for interrupting, but we would like to still provide room for further questions. A gentleman over there.
Jiří Karlík, Primagas. I'm sorry, I'm not able to leave this topic about CNG, but what is happening last few years in the United States that you can see new studies which are basically facing the situation with natural gas, which is for global climate more dangerous than any normal fossil fuel. The reason is methane emission of natural gas. And for example, there is the study called Bridge to Nowhere, saying that any foreseeable usage of natural gas it's worse than in transport or in normal combustion. It's worse than using the normal fossil fuel. What do you think about those studies and why are so different than your study, wheel to wheel? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. We do take into account in our oil to tank part the emissions that happen at production sites, and it is true that they have a very strong impact. I mean, methane has a global warming potential that is much higher than CO2, basically. At the same time, there's both an economic interest and regulation going in that direction, namely when considering the Fuel Quality Directive that addresses the issue of flaring and venting emissions. And addressing that topic, I agree that is a very important step to make sure that CNG is clean over the entire or cleaner over the entire pathway and chain that is being considered.
Thank you very much, Aura. We have a next question here.
Thank you. Bruno Lenoir from WAG Payment Solution. My question is coming from the presentation of Philip Good, but maybe Ilya Lingorski, you will have some views on that. You mentioned empowering consumers, and in this very complex topic, and the more I listen, the less I think I understand this very complex topic with complex solution. When is there a favorable context, political or economical, to empower the consumers, the general public? And is it something that we should promote, in this case, to empower the consumers?
You may have to explain your question because, I think from what I see is the political direction we are being given as a commission is that the role of the consumers in energy and the energy transition is fundamental, and that there may be, through policy in the past, we have focused too much on the producers and suppliers and not enough on the consumers in terms of the way we think about things. So in terms of a direction that we've been given to work, that's what we've been asked by the political level to look at.
And can we encourage more a pull from the consumers for greener energy than having a push from the legislation?
Yes, I think the point is the legislation needs to facilitate consumer choice. It needs to provide the right incentives for consumers, ensure that they have the right sorts of information, and so they're making informed choices. I think in some of the areas we deal with, we find out there's a lack of information and awareness, which means that the consumer's choice may be limited. So that's one of the areas that we need to work on.
Thank you very much, Philip. Ilya would like to comment it.
It's actually a very intellectually challenging question because it brings us to the economic paradox that this is one of the areas where you can support the demand side by actually introducing measures for supporting the supply side. Because you empower the consumer basically by reducing taxes and deregulating. That's when the consumer will have more power and more decision-making weight. And it can be a win-win. However, I'm skeptical Europe will be fast to go into that direction because European government policy making is extremely demand-side biased, as there is enormous and unpayable cost of the welfare state, which very much limits governments on the supply side. and that's where the question is. But the welfare state is going bankrupt in the next 20 years anyway. So we will have to, be brave, and it's no other way but the Reaganomics. That's how we empower consumers.
Thank you very much, Ilya. At the very moment, Mr. Good has to leave, unfortunately, and we will have just the very last question here. And
it's not a question, it's a remark. My name is Walter Dorno from Germany, and 1 minute ago, Mr. Lingorski, I would start my remark with no question to you, and and I would like to have no question as well to you, but a remark. I liked your presentation very well, and what I think that within the whole energy change we have in Europe, we need more voices like yours, which are looking into the economical side of the whole change we have to do. And if you look at the end, is a point that you have to pay for the energy change. It's you can get it not for nothing. You have to pay for it, and you need, let's say, economies which are rich enough to pay for it. And if you look at Germany, it's a rich country, of course, but if you look at Germany, and I do not know if you know that one of the biggest chemical companies in the world, BASF, made their biggest investment they ever did in their company's life in the States, because the energy costs are 1/3 of that what they have to pay in Europe. And if you look at one of the biggest, I think it was RWE, there was an announcement in the radio just right now about their loss of the last year, 7 billion euros. Normally they are bankruptcy, but I don't know. But it's a big company, but they made a big loss, and not only, but because of the energy change as well. So what we have to do, in my opinion, we have to look at the economy side very intensive, and not only on the environmental side. We have to do both, and I think Europe is, let's say, doing that not intensive enough. That's my remark to your presentation and to the whole energy change which we have in front of us.
Thank you very much.
Respond briefly to this one. I absolutely share your point of view, but again, Europe is very, as I said, demand-sided, and there are different ways of paying for change. I mean, one way of paying for change, for example, in Germany over the last 10, 15 years, is that Germany as an economy invested quite a bit in energy efficiency. Germany is very energy efficient industry today. I mean, it produces €1 GDP with 1/5 of the energy Bulgaria uses to produce the same €1 GDP. And why was that? Not because of environmental concerns. That was because people wanted to bring their cost of energy and everything down. And that relates to the example you gave about America, where competitive prices of certain energy sources became very attractive and boosted reindustrialization. But how was that change paid? For decades, the price of oil was so high and the price of money was so low that it became very attractive to use cheap money and invest in new solutions in order, again, to bring your costs down. It wasn't driven by environmental concerns. And I am personally very skeptical about the magnitude of the impact of regulation driven purely by environmental concerns. I have not seen that work yet anywhere, and we probably need to readdress a little bit at government policy making as well the question about which issues do we want to solve in order to achieve something which is practical. That also goes to the question about CNG. Isn't it more dangerous than other, source of energy?
Excuse me, as I see that we could already go further,
Yeah,
and it is already a never-ending topic.
Where we see a problem which is real and could be addressed, that's where we have to dedicate the resources. But artificial policy making behind closed doors, on ideological basis has never worked, and like Mikhail said, it brings us back to the planned economy, and that will bankrupt.
Thank you very much for the comment. Now I would like to, since we run out of time and we are approaching the end of the conference, I would like to ask Thierry Muldock, the president of UPI, to close the conference.
Thank you very much. So, are we now replacing the fossil fuels by natural gas, by electricity? Do you have the answer to your questions? Well, I think that we still have a lot of questions, but we are very thankful to the people that you are sitting here in this room, listening and contributing by your presence and showing your interest in some biggest challenge that we have here in Europe at this very moment. So thank you very much for your presence, and I think that we have had the chance to have perfect good speakers. So I can only thank you. Mr. Kotekci, you delighted and you put in light the environment, and this is the base of what we are speaking today. You were explaining the challenges as far as the fossil fuels are concerned in their replacement. But then Philip, who left already, he's putting that in another perspective, and that political challenges are certainly even important as the environmental one. And then a total other sound of music, because there we had Ilya talking about the economic challenges. And we were all very surprised when we put that in that perspective to see on the macro side what it means exactly what we are doing and what we are facing. And I think that we also were very, very pleased that Laura was explaining us the scientific side of what's happening. And in fact, this is where the fundamental conclusion can come out. She said several times during her speech, you know, there is no good answer, there is no bad answer, but it will have to be very specific to each type of situation. That gives us a little bit of hope. And I think that Michael, he is also giving us that same hope, and more than that, because he is producing cars of the future. So even when you will be retired, I think that you will have to go to the beautiful countryside with your gasoline car. Thank you very much. I just want to thank you all for this presence and for your contribution. And in the name of UPI and the members of UPI, I'm very thankful of your presence here and to have given us the possibility to have this meeting. I also want to thank a few other people. I think that one of the architects of this session is Ivan. Ivan Indrafek, thank you very much for your very good organization. And I want to comprise there your colleague Anna Pavliskova. She has done quite a lot of job as well, as I heard in the backyard of this room. So thank you very much for all the job you did. Thank you. And I also like to thank Martin Vohanka, because he has put in a lot of support to all this organization, and we are very grateful that we have been able to have so many people here on board, and I think that this was a very, very good exercise for UPI, but also for the Czech Republic. So it makes some noise, and I think that this is very important for everybody.